Really, Arya means one who has like nobility, purity, and good qualities and good nature, and who is always focused on like spiritual culture, not material culture. That is an Aryan. But most people who consider themselves Aryans are not actually Aryans. So we have Aryan on one side, non-Aryan on one side. Krishna says you're acting like a non-Aryan. So we can understand what Krishna means. We should not use our own conception. We should understand Krishna's conception. When Krishna says you are not acting like an Aryan, then Krishna begins to detail through the next verses what is the difference between Aryan and non-Aryan. We should understand from Krishna's point of view. And from Krishna's point of view, it's very clear as he goes forward that what are the next verses Krishna says? Like next he says, Klaibyang ma samaga ma parta, you should get up and fight. Tyakto tishta parantapa, get up and fight. Then when Arjuna shows further doubts, and then finally surrenders to Krishna, Karpanya doshopata svabhava prichtamitam dharma samuda chaitayan shreyacha nishitang bruhitam meshishastyam sadimang tam prapanam. Arjuna surrenders saying, I don't know what to do. Now I am lost in ignorance, and I surrender unto you, accept you as my guru, please instruct me. So then Krishna thinks, okay, when you surrender to Guru, then Guru accepts the disciple and he will give divine knowledge. So then Krishna starts giving transcendental knowledge. What is the difference between spirit and matter? What is the difference between a real Aryan or a real human being versus a Dvipad Pashu? Basically, Aryan, non-Aryan, you have two-legged animals, which is like a human being who is on a very low consciousness, completely material consciousness. Like you see, they have no idea about spiritual life, no idea about religious life, only living. What is the difference between man and animal? That ahar nidra baya maitunancha. Animals and humans have two things in common, like eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Ahara nidra baya maitun. Okay, that's in Sanskrit. We can see humans are doing that and all the animals are doing that. But what is the difference between humankind and animals? Is that humans have that ability for higher reason, intelligence, and that is the divine spark within man that comes from God, the divine nature. And unless that divine nature within us is pointing towards spiritual life and higher life, then we are living like a two-legged animal, and we're wasting this valuable life that we have got. That's why it said, Labdva sudurlabhamidam, that this human form of life is very rare, because only in that human form of life can you reach the highest destination, can you escape this prison of samsara and attain your true identity, your true spiritual identity. So that's the first thing. So Krishna then says many verses, and in those verses Krishna explains what is the difference between the spirit, soul, and matter. So he starts many verses in the second chapter. You could say the primary focus of the first 15, 20 slokas is about the real nature of the soul. And he gives many different examples. What is the real nature of the soul? He says, Dehinos minyata dehi komaram yovanam jalatata dehantara praptir dhirasatra namuyati. As the body, as you pass through different stages of life, from boyhood to youth, to manhood, to old age, then finally to death, then just as these changes are going on, after you die again, this cycle continues. So similarly, the soul is passing from these different stages, and it will also pass on into a new life. That's like, he's establishing the principle of reincarnation. But that's like one angle of the nature of the soul. He's not completely defining it yet. He's saying this is the basic idea, that the soul is transcendental to the body. Even when the body is lost, the soul maintains its spiritual identity. Then he says this verse, Natvevahang jatunasam natvam neme janadipa nachaiva nabhavishyama sarvivaya matapuram. That Krishna says, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you nor all these kings, nor in the future shall we ever cease to be. So he further defines the soul, that the soul is immortal. The soul goes through many transformations as long as it's bound in matter, because the nature of matter is that it's transitory. The nature of matter is that it's always changing from one state to another, whereas the nature of the soul is that it is eternal. So he says that even though these bodies are changing, the soul is not will not perish, it will not die. So he says, Ya enam veti hantaram yaschainam manyate haptam ubhavato na vijanito nayang hanti na hanyate. In 219 or 18. He says that person who thinks that he is killing another, or that person who thinks he is being killed by another, both are in ignorance, because really no one is the slayer and no one is the slain. The soul is eternal and immortal and beyond these material changes. Material nature is that it is changing. So that's why Krishna says, what is the material nature? Nasato vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate sata upayorapi drishtuantas tvanyos tattvadarshibhi. A wise person knows, one who knows the reality, the truth, knows that for that which is temporary, or which is made of matter, there's no permanence. This body and all these things we see in the world will change. this whole planetary system will collapse. And then another cycle will begin. These cycles, that the material nature is real, is truthful, but it is always changing. It's transformational. It's always changing. And so you cannot change that. Nasato vidite bhavo. You cannot make something which is temporary and always changing to become permanent. But nasato vidite, nabhavo vidite sata. That which is a permanent and pure reality, it can never have this material change like matter does. That's the nature of the soul. The soul will not change like matter changes. So nasato vidite bhavo nabhavo vidite ubayora pitarstvantastvanias tattvadarshi. So the tattvadarshis understand this. So then he continues. He says, what is matra? He says, okay, he tells you that this is one that's more about the nature of an Aryan. These are like, he's trying to tell you what is the nature of the soul and identify with the soul, not with the external covering. And then you can be an Aryan. So then he says, okay, if you're like a proper Aryan, you should develop this qualities of this verse. Matras, because this verse is more about your qualities. Matras parsas tu kunteya sitoshnas tukadukada agama painonitis tangstatiksasvarta. When you're able to tolerate all these different changes, happiness and distress, loss and gain. He also says, Sukha duke same kritva laba laba jaya jaya toyoto yudayujas vanaivam papam vapsasi. You should fight for the sake of fighting without considering victory or defeat, loss or gain, happiness or distress, and thus doing thou shalt never incur any sin. So he tells him how to fight. He tells him to fight and tells him how to fight. And then he says you should always be equipoised, whether it is hot or cold, whether you're happy or disturbed, depressed or happy, you should always try to do your dharma. So someone who is always doing their dharma, their proper spiritual duty, not the material dharma, their spiritual dharma, not naimatika dharma, their real dharma. When they are always doing that, then they can be classified as Aryan. Otherwise, they're non-Aryan. You're always doing, whether the external, whatever, if it's favorable or not favorable, like Prabhuji, whether the situation is favorable or not, whether he is sick or not, he goes on parikrama. I saw for 10 months, in 2010, he was going on Govardhan parikrama every day and doing Giriraj Puja, praying for Gurudev's good health. And Prabhuji became very sick. In the monsoon season he was going, for weeks at a time, it was torrential rain. And Prabhuji was going on parikrama, walking the whole time. And even he was coughing and very sick, but he was doing his dharma. Why? Ragu kule rit sara chala jai pran jai baru vachana na jai. This is the mood of someone who is like an Aryan. That even if, like this do or die mentality, right? Karna ya marna, I will do it or I'll die. And that's why the Ragus say that, oh, this is our line. We would rather give up our life. Pran jai bar vachana na jai. We will give up our body before we give up the line of truth, before we give up dharma. Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada said, I don't mind if the whole world is against me on one side and I am alone on my side with my Gurudev. But I will not leave my Gurudev, I will not leave my dharma. That is the mood of a real Aryan. So this Aryan isn't... Now, the problem is, in the modern day, that people have subverted this culture. People have tried to make this idea of being a pure Aryan contaminated. This is by the agency of Kali. Because basically in material life, there will always be some battle going on. So what is the cause of the battle? There's always different fights going on between political parties. Nowadays we don't see external war so much, but it is said politics is another form of warfare. All the politics going on in all the democracies, that is another kind of warfare without bloodshed. Because man has this nature to fight. They're always fighting over their own material position and gratification. So therefore they're always fighting. And this is like warfare. This is the battle. But what is the underpinning that is causing them to fight? This is actually, they are all like puppets. That the Bhagavad Gita also says that yantra rudrani maya. We're on the machine of material nature and we're being, the gunas, the three modes of material nature, raja, sattva and tama, are making mankind move like puppets on a string. So really it's the gunas that are doing this. And that's when you can get higher knowledge. Another nature of the Aryan is said, prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasa ahankara vimudatma kartahamiti manyate. One who is a non-Aryan is someone who has ahankar, this pride of material agency, that I am the doer. Whereas if we know in truth that we are now the prisoners of material nature and the gunas are acting through us, the modes of nature, passion, ignorance, and goodness, and all their different subtleties. So they are forcing us to act.
Where is it mentioned?
Prakriti kriyamanani. This is in the later chapter. We'll go over this one later. So these are what's forcing us to act. So also Krishna says in the other chapter of the Gita, he says that all the gunas are always fighting for supremacy, because this is the nature of material world. Sometimes sattva is victorious and sattva is winning. and everyone else is subdued, like in Satya Yuga mostly. Sometimes Raja is victorious, the mode of passion, and Tama and Sattva are subordinate. Sometimes Tama is victorious, and Raja and Tama, Sattva are subordinate. This is like we see also in political systems and all over, that people are always jostling for position. We see this in modern society, that like for example in feminism, they say that, oh, the future is female. And what do they mean by that? They say that we will be in charge and men will be subordinate. So this is actually Purush Bhav. This is the mood of being the dominator and the enjoyer, that I will be in charge and everyone else will be subordinate to me. This is also a problem. But then they say, okay, they're in charge, then they're bad, then I should pull them down. So both sides is like, the point is not that who is right or who is wrong. The point is that this mentality of that I want to be in charge, I want to rule, I want to defeat others, we think this is myself and my own desire and good for me, but really this is just you being pulled on the strings of the gunas. You are just like a puppet being pulled on the strings. Until you learn how to cut the strings that are pulling you, you can imagine you are walking, that all the devas are enjoying through you. It is said that when you are walking, when you are eating, it said when a young person is moving about, then the sun and the moon are enjoying through them. In the nighttime, the moon is enjoying. In the daytime, the sun is enjoying. The devas are enjoying through us. And the objects of the senses and the senses themselves are enjoying through us. We think, I want to eat this ice cream. But you want to eat it, or what wants to eat it? Like if you have candida, this gut bacteria disease, then you're always desiring to eat like oily and sweet things. And you think, oh, I want to eat ice cream, I want to eat this chocolate bar. But is that your desire, or is it the bacteria desire? There's a point. We think that we are desiring these things, but really material nature is acting through us. And we still think, ahankare vimudatma kartamiti manyate. We still think I am the doer. So this is ignorance, right? So until we can escape from this kind of ignorance, then we don't become truly free. So the difference between a non-Aryan and Aryan is that one is bound by this Maya and one is free. So we have to try to free ourselves from this. Then we can become, why? And it's the same thing with Arjuna. Arjuna is becoming bewildered, and then he's like losing all hope and faith in Krishna. Even though he's there with Krishna, and Krishna is telling him what to do, he has become so overwhelmed that he is like now hopeless. He's not ready to do this like do or die. Okay, so then another important thing. Okay, so then the problem, so what I was saying is that it's like a battle place. And specifically in the Kali Yuga, this is the reign of quarrel and hypocrisy. So it's like a more intense battle. In other ages, the battle may be not so intense. But in Kali Yuga, it's like family, brother fighting with sister, sister with brother, sister with sister, wife with husband, society, town with cities, with countries, with neighbors. It's like everyone is always trying to exert their own authority. Why? It's also like we see in the age of the monarchs, like even in Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, Satya Yuga, there would be monarchs and they would rule over the whole land. And then there wasn't so much fighting. Sometimes one king is fighting with another king. But now we see in this modern society that everyone's fighting with everyone to put forward their own ideas. They're all fighting. So the basic problem and why they are fighting is because they identify with the skin and flesh. This is the main thing to divide you between are you an Aryan or a non-Aryan. If you consider yourself to be the flesh and the skin, then you are non-Aryan. So in Kali Yuga, what we see is now, since the time of, we see Nazi Germany, right? We see Nazi Germany. This is the arrangement of Kali, to try to spoil the reputation of the Aryans. Because this is not a foreign word. We should not give up this word. Krishna himself is using this word in his first verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Anarya justam asvargam. He said you should not act like a non-Arya. You should be like an Arya. Arya means Aryan. Like we see in Sanskrit, we say Brahma. And in English, they say Brahman. They change the word a little bit. But really it means the same thing. So in Sanskrit, you say Anarya or Arya. Arya means someone who has nobility of spirit, who is following their true dharma, and who is aware of the difference between matter and spirit, and acting in the service of spirit or the supreme spirit, Krishna. So we see like in Nazi Germany, right, that Hitler took this term, Aryan, and he said that Aryan means, someone who has like white skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes. But is that following Krishna's idea, or is that his own material idea? Is this Krishna's idea or his idea? This is the Nazi philosophy is that, Aryan is like someone who is the perfect Aryan, blonde hair, blue eyes, and white skin.
But Nazis are not like that.
Okay, but they said that's like the perfect person, the perfect ideal.
Look at Hitler.
Yeah, he was an Aryan, that's for sure. Short, ugly, and dark hair. So the point is that, look, we have to follow Krishna's idea, not any material idea. This is not something about a race. This is something about spiritual culture and spiritual knowledge. We can see, like Hanuman, he is Aryan or non-Aryan? Anyone who is identifying with their real spiritual nature and serving the real dharma of the soul and God, they're Aryan. They have this nobility. What about Kakbusandi? He was a crow. So people like, he's just a bird, he's an animal. And also the crow is like the lowest of the birds. And yet he was like the topmost devotee of Ram. So he is Aryan. So this is not a category of skin and flesh. Someone who is attached to skin and flesh, and this idea of skin and flesh, then they are actually non-Aryan. They are in Maya. And there are many examples in Sastra. I want to tell a few of these examples. So the point is, we should more identify with the soul than the external model, the external vehicle. The body is the vehicle, so we should identify with the soul. So just a quick story, that once Astavakra Rishi, I just want to talk about one story that's in relation to this idea of who is an Aryan, who is non-Aryan. Astavakra Rishi came to the assembly of Janak Maharaj, the father of Sita. And Janak Maharaj was a famous Mahajan. He was a very great personality, very wise personality. And Astavakra Rishi was like crooked in 8 places. Astavakra, Asta means 8, and Vakra means 8 kind of bends. So you can imagine, maybe Abhiram can display how he was walking, you know? He was walking and like, you can imagine if you're crooked in 8 places, like crippled in 8 places, then he was, walking in such a funny way. Maybe Arun can teach us also. So he was a great aged sage, but he looked very funny. And when he walked into the court, they were having like an assembly, and all the pandits were there, all the Brahmins were there, all the sages were there. Janak Maharaj was there, and they're having like a Ishtagoshti, a discussion. And he walked into this, and like, yeah. And everyone started laughing loudly. And when everyone was laughing so loudly, then what did he do? He started laughing even more loudly while walking forward, in his funny way. And they were like pointing at him and ridiculing him. And then he came forward to Janak Maharaj, and Janak Maharaj, he had the proper etiquette. So he gave him a royal seat, and he sat him down, gave him some water, washed his feet, and said, "Now I want to hear something from you. I have one request." Everyone was starting to quiet down, but still some people were like giggling, and like joking, But then Janak Maharaj said, "I want to ask you something. So please tell me." Everyone was like laughing at you, but don't be offended. But everyone was laughing at you. But then you started laughing even more. So then Astavakra Rishi said, "Yes, I was laughing. Why? Because, I came from very long distance with great difficulty. It's not so easy for me to walk far away. But I came from a long distance because I heard that here was an assembly of the topmost Aryans, the topmost people established in their true dharma, and they're having a spiritual discussion, and they're talking about the nature of the soul and how to be established in Sanatana Dharma. You're talking, and these are the true Aryans. But yet when I walked in, you started laughing and pointing fingers and joking and saying, oh, look at how funny he looks." He said, "I thought you were Aryans, I thought you were topmost Brahmins, but really you are just Sudras. Not only Sudras, Sudra means like the lowest class in Vedic culture. But really, it's not according to birth, it's according to qualification. And we'll tell a short story about that also afterwards. The real classification of where you are in the social structure is according to your qualification, not your birth. All right? So he said, "I thought I came into an assembly of Aryans and Brahmins, but I see I'm amidst Sudras. And of the Sudras, there's many levels of Sudras. One is the cobbler. He works with leather. He kills animals, takes the hide of animals, and makes shoes. So he said, you're all just cobblers. That's why I was laughing. I was thinking, I came from a long way to find an assembly of like the wisest, Aryas. But you're all just cobblers. Why? You're only looking at the external covering, only looking at the skin, not seeing anything about the soul. So you're Sudra. And what is also the quality of a Sudra means? Sochanati iti Sudra. That person who's always lamenting about their material condition, they are Sudras. So all these people who are like whining and complaining about like, oh, I'm a victim of this, I'm a victim of that, I'm oppressed by this, oppressed by that. They are Shudra. This is the Sudra nature. And also those people who are thinking, I am so great, I can point fingers and laugh at other people, they're also Sudra. Both is Sudra, because they're both absorbed in material ideas, material identification, material knowledge, material understanding. So Astavakra Rishi established this point, and this is in the Sastra. He said, you are not Aryas, you are Sudras. You are not even Sudras, you are cobblers. So people who are like this, it doesn't matter which side you are. People are always liking to fight. But whatever side you're on, if you're thinking according to terms of skin and flesh, or nationality, where they came from, there's no consideration of this in bhakti. Jai bhaje se bara bhakta hinachar Krishna bhajana nati jati kuladi vichar. Mahaprabhu said, Jai bhaje se bara, whoever is worshipping with the most love and devotion, they are the topmost. We see in the gopis are worshipped as the topmost. People may say, oh, why should it be the girls? Should be the boys. But the gopis have more love and devotion for Krishna, therefore they are the topmost. That's why Krishna says, napariyam sadhu krityam, that you are the topmost sadhus, the gopis. Also we see in the forest, Radharani herself, when she saw the Pulinda Kanyas. Pulinda Kanya means like the Aboriginal girls. They lived in the forest, they collect wood, they don't have they don't live in like the city or in the town. But they were taking the kumkum that was from the feet of Krishna, that before had been on the chest of the gopis, and smeared on their bodies and absorbed in ecstasy and love for Krishna. And Radharani herself said, how glorious are they? How great is their devotion? So who is more exalted? So it's not about an external thing, it's about the internal mood, the internal devotion.